Midwestuary 2025. I have just left the place where I'm staying and I am en route to Elmhurst Christian Reformed Church. And wow, the sun is like cutting off. It's like splitting my face. So, very excited. More to come. Signs from Midwestuary! You shall be the fellowship of the Spirit. Big symbolic world presence here. Symbolic world, and the king of symbolic world right there.
Our Chicagoland people here in the audience that are not part of our group. So we meet on the fourth Tuesday, in Des Plaines Public Library.
Just got out of the first lecture from Paul Vanderklay. It was absolutely dynamite, Age of Public Spirits type stuff. I really hope they filmed that because I want to watch it again later. But yeah, I'm so excited. It won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Yeah, this isn't a bunch of hippies at all. If I have things,
I thought because I'm with a bunch of experts here, people who've been kind of following these conversations for a long time, I thought we would try to push a little harder on our understanding of what that means, of why these words that we use are not arbitrary. We've spent the last 100 years, people trying to convince us that a lot of these words are kind of just arbitrary words, spirit, angel, heaven, all these things. But they actually have meanings, and they actually are talking.
I'm a Christian, but in my book I write the word God in square brackets through most of the text to acknowledge that is perhaps the most semiotically dense three letters in our language, that it is dragging burdens of baggage and associations with it. Right, so today I'm going to say divine in the hope that I can invite as many of you as possible to go on this journey with me. But if you are allergic to it or indeed annoyed that I'm not using God, that's fine too, because this is a space where we can tolerate these things, I think. So I believe yes.
So I want to start with predictive processing. What is it? It's one of the big frameworks, and it is an attempt to address one of the meta problems. I'm going to use meta a lot. Live with it. Okay, so you're generally intelligent, unlike the so-called AGI that people are claiming we might have. With lots of, I can talk about that later. Right? You are.
Wow. We just listened to John Vervaeke. That was amazing. I am not John Vercooked. I am John Verbakied.
So, panel, this is purely reactionary. So you don't have to come up with anything except reacting to the question. All right, my first paper question, I don't have an author. These are submitted to me anonymously, so if you know, you know. Okay. We have heard several speakers refer to the meaning crisis. Could someone briefly explain what that is and how it develops?
All right, so I just got back from day one of Midwestuary 2025, and that was one of the best things I've ever been a part of, and it's only halfway done. There's still more to come. From my actual estuary group to the keynote speakers, oh my gosh. And even the order that they sequenced the speakers in was, you can tell it was done well. The day kicked off with registration. I walked into the Elmhurst CRC Church. As I'm going into the door, I noticed in the corner of my eye a man that I know, Dr. Colin Barnes, who is in the psychology department at Hillsdale College. My brother took a course from him. I've run into Dr. Barnes at local coffee shops in Hillsdale. I don't know if he remembered me, but I remembered him, and things started to jog his memory. And I was like, "Oh, someone I know here. Of course you would be here. You're a psychology professor, Peterson, Jung, you know." So that was nice. So I am already trying to kind of talk talk it up with him of trying estuary in Hillsdale now that we have a shared experience. His wife is with him too, so we register, we get in. First thing is Paul. No, before we go back for Paul Vanderklay's speech, we actually met our estuary group. So I was in group 6. Dr. Jim is my estuary leader. With a lot of members in my group. Um, I kind of was the de facto note taker and keep tracker of the conversation. We had a woman named Allison from Central Illinois, a gentleman named Peter from Utah, David, I don't remember where David said he was from, a woman named Rebecca, who is in Brent's estuary group in Portland. We discovered that. And like, that's insane. Brent's like one of my best friends. Small world. Of course, there's a high chance someone from that estuary group would be attending, but I love that we can connect here. There's a Russian fella named Ilya and Brittany we brought with him who they announced to us in our estuary meeting, and I'm assuming it's okay to say this in this context too, since they brought it to us, but they're expecting a baby girl, and it's so cool to talk about that, especially because both of them never saw themselves being parents, really, ever in their adult lives. So very, very happy occurrence for them. They were tears shed. It was cool. Um, and then we had a guy named Jess who was been doing the AV for the whole day, so he didn't really pop in until later. But it was nice to have him. And then of course, Paul actually surprise guested in my estuary group, and I don't know if he will tomorrow, but that was cool. I had been waiting for months and months and months to give him this mug that I bought from memesforjesus.com. That is a picture of Mark Driscoll with the font from Alex Jones's InfoWars show. But it says Info Mars instead of Info Wars, which is a nod to Mars Hill Church that Mark Driscoll was a pastor of. So, and the photo of Mark is him kind of like saying something, big eyes, like energy. So I had stopped PBK at the coffee shop in the church earlier that morning to say hello and tell him about the mug and the BLT project, which he was super excited to hear about. And I said, I don't know if I can see you later, but I have this mug I want to give you. I didn't tell him what it was about. And then lo and behold, he surprises us in our estuary group. And so when we were done, I handed it to him and he was like, oh, oh man, that's something. And so we had a good laugh. Um, but our estuary leader, Dr. Jim, he's from Boise. I believe, probably retired cardiologist. And as I think he said he had done estuary group leading before, but we just kicked things off with introducing ourselves, and a lot of us kind of trickled into the room a little bit over several minutes. So we had kind of kept reintroducing ourselves and something personal about us, and then we really didn't get into the pitch point play setup for some estuary conversation until we met again later in that afternoon. So I'll talk about what happened in between. So we had enough time to meet each other. Then we went right back up for Paul Vanderklay's keynote speech, talking about the age of public spirits. And he's done a lot of videos recently on that. I haven't watched as many of those. I watched more of his content that he just posted in this last week uh, about the kind of Brett Weinstein, I can just say no to my robot programming fallacy type stuff. But his main thing, and it's PVK, so like I knew it was going to wander, and I was going to have to make an effort to follow. But I think I got the gist of what that meant to be, which was basically to kick off the discussion of this theme of the conference is the fellowship of the Spirit. What do we mean by that? What are spirits? What are things that possess us and motivate us and move us, in kind of as the ancient Greeks would say, the motivation, the things that animates us, the animus, what is the moving aspect of us, what has us that makes us passionate and what grips us. So, and will that carry with us in the eternal? And if it does, is it good? Is it bad? It's, what is this thing we are coalescing and congregating around as the subject of the conference in our immediate personal experience, in our corporate experience. So that was his talk. Then we had Jonathan Pageau speak, which was wonderful. I mean, I'm very aware of who he is, but mostly by proxy of Jordan Peterson. I have not watched a lot of his own content in the symbolic world. He broke down this whole thing of everything is related through fractals. He loves fractals. Brent, you also love fractals. So I'm sure you would have been very happy to listen to that lecture, but it goes from all of these hierarchy maps that he had that were basically just explaining that the variation and potential within nature and order and chaos is downstream from, essentially he's arguing for like platonic forms, really, to get philosophical about it, although I don't know if he would call it that. But everything comes from above, comes from something, even if that's not visibly represented, it's implied. Nothing can just come from nothing. It has to come from something. And within that pattern all the way down is the full expression of that thing from its inception. Within the seed of the plant is the whole plant, but it is itself not exactly the plant, but within it is contained the entire pattern of the plant. What are other things in life that are manifested like that, where fractally it unfolds to its most unique and individual, specific forms? A maple tree, a particular kind of maple is different from that maple tree, which is different from that maple tree, and this is the maple tree in my yard. And what can that tell us about trees in general, and plants in general, and living beings in general? It's nested within all of those things. And yet we experience it in this individuated, present, embodied nature in our tactile experience of it. So he basically ran that model through a lot of different things. Authority down to power. What else did he do? Revelation, laws, human leadership. There was a lot. It was very good though. Then I believe we had lunch. And there were a lot of people I met that day. So outside of my Estuary group, there are some folks in the Grand Rapids group that I met about a year ago when I visited their Estuary meetings. My buddy Joseph Workman, who also works for the same employer that I do, and his Estuary leader Bernie Greisen, I don't know, and then Gil, and also the Grand Rapids group there. I just started meeting people. Oh, this is when I met Father Eric Snyder, who is an Anglican priest in Milwaukee in the Diocese of the Upper Midwest, and he actually knows some Hillsdale graduate contacts of mine that are also friends with my brother. He was a priest in the United Methodist Church, UMC, and basically because of the fallout the denomination had on some LGBTQ issues or what have you, that's kind of what made him leave. But he had already been considering uh, even more higher liturgy Christian tradition with his son, who then went to Hillsdale. Then his son actually became Catholic and married a Catholic there. That all too common Hillsdale College story, and I'm sure they wonderful wonderful relationship. I don't mean anything to them in particular, but um, they have that father son kind of shared experience, of course, of we both are seeking this deeper connection to history and tradition than the one we're currently in, and how they both ended up not landing in the same place necessarily. I would love to interview them as part of uh, the BLT sequence of interviews here. So wonderful to meet him. So funny that we, had mutual friends and got to meet each other. And I mean, I wouldn't have ever thought he was a priest because he's not wearing, a collar. I think he's in a sweater. So it was very cool to meet him. Um, who else did? I mean, I don't know who I. Oh, there's this gentleman from Detroit who converted to Orthodoxy, no prior Christian background. Um, I met him. I forgot his name. Sad. I sat with him for a little bit, and then after that, I think we then just went to our estuary groups after that, and that was really when things got cooking. And that's when Paul Vanderclay joined us. Was for that afternoon session actually. So. Um, the different kinds of pitches our group had, uh, self-preservation, discomfort with openness to the other. Oh, no, 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 no. Elizabeth Oldfield. So sorry. Her talk was so good. Oh, it was also just kind of refreshing too, because it was very relational. It kind of got us all out of our heads a little bit into our hearts. Um, uh, and that was right after lunch. So, excuse me. That was wonderful. She had this quote up on her screen the entire time that she spoke, which, by the way, was more refreshing than having to read a new slide every 5 minutes. It was just nice to have the same thing for her entire talk up on the screen. It was a quote from C.S. Lewis. And I'm scrolling back in my DMs to myself in Facebook Messenger to find it. Here it is. We seek an enlargement of our being. We want to be more than ourselves. We want to see with other eyes, to imagine with other imaginations, to feel with other hearts as well as our own. The primary impulse of each is to maintain and aggrandize himself. The secondary impulse is to go out of the self to correct its provincialism, or she uses synonymous word a lot, parochialism, and heal its loneliness. Go out of the self, correct its provincialism, and heal its loneliness. Go out to the other and be vulnerable. She had this quote from Martin Buber about the I-it distinction going to the I-thou distinction. Rod Dreher also brought up that exact same point later when he talked. I can't remember what the point of that was, except to say the word thou linguistically is actually saying hello, you, and it's a little more intimate of a greeting, and it's the point of I'm really trying to actually engage in a more intimate connection than I might otherwise would in relating to you. So that was wonderful. That was so good. So, anyways, then we went to estuary. So, self-preservation, discomfort with openness to the other. What kind of self must precede the best engagement toward and about the other? Sacrifice being kind of the interpretive key of resurrecting community. What does that mean? Dr. Jim talked about how he really liked how Pageau has really lived into his ideas, but how does he do the same about his own? He really requires some emotional drama to constitute his faith. And he was saying he felt like that Peugeot kind of lacked that a little bit, just a little too heady. And for Dr. Jim personally wants to include that mythological, poetic, emotional aspect a little bit more. Um, and the others were kind of just popping off of the same idea. And I think Allison and Rebecca were really talking about how um, it can be very uncomfortable to try and make that connection to community with other people, especially when you're not feeling like it's working yet or whatever your criteria for that is. Um, and if you're not necessarily predisposed to that way in your personality, this is at this point in the conversation, PBK was like, he was quoting Jonathan Haidt and talking about winning the cortical lottery, referring to your top five, your big five personality um, placement with agreeableness, neuroticism, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion. Now he's like, I basically have zero negative emotion. Or a few people in the room were like, "You lucky dog, good for you." It's really funny. And so that can be difficult, and so that was a big thing of discussion. And once we got to so that was pitch. Then we got to point, and really, I think almost everybody wanted to jump on what Allison and Rebecca were talking about, and just how to handle disembodied grief and what is the embodying process like? How messy is it? What do I do when I feel like it's not working? Whatever, things like that. Um, and then we really got into some conversation. Um, yeah. Uh, we talked about how humor is a function of the spirit. It's like breath. That's why, one of our members in the group really loves comedy. And Dr. Jim talked about how, yeah, for me, that's the blues or the Psalms. Um, there's Peter, he talked a lot about just this like choice pressure cooker between like, I have this obligation to live, but what do I do when I feel like I'm not even living? I can't live. Um, and our guy Jess was there at that point, and he was really talking about how maybe it's not so much of choosing one or the other, but that the ultimate choice is just to get through it, to get through those things. Um, then he told this hilarious story about, and I was trying to figure out how it related to the whole thing. But he told this story about this Jewish story of a man who's in water and he's drowning, and he could muster enough air to properly hold his breath to swim away, but he's panicking so much that he can't properly hold his breath and breathe right. And there's this rabbi up on this hill watching down, and he can't help him. So, what the one thing the rabbi says to the drowning man is, "Give my regards to Leviathan." And that sounds so ridiculous and funny to the man that it causes him to laugh. And this laughter actually gives him better breath control. And that was it. We were talking about how humor is the spirit, and the laughter actually gives him the ability to catch his breath and enough to swim out. And so that actually is what saves him. So that story was just meant to make the point of how like the ridiculous and the in humor can be the thing that uh, brings about our own saving in that way, our own flourishing. Um, that was how that was connected. And just how vulnerable the embodiment process truly is. This is when we started dropping in some glossary words like authenticity, prophilicity, sincerity culture, authenticity culture. Sincerity is more of a group thing. Authenticity is an individual thing. Things like that. My group it didn't really feel like there was any one person who hadn't really gotten the nomenclature and the the glossary words down. It really felt like people were coming into it knowing what all those things meant, except maybe for one or two words. So we didn't have to do this like huge definition thing, which was nice. It's good that people didn't feel excluded in that regard. Um, and yeah, Allison was talking about how like in order for herself to feel like she's actually participating in an embodied experience in some way, she has to just let it happen and be possessed by the thing instead of create these like these rules and these strictures and these guidelines that only make her think about what she can't do. Or and one of them being that she can't she was talking about art and how like she can't show this to anyone because if she knows that she will, that will alter what she makes. We were kind of talking about how even with a good thing, if you approach it with the wrong spirit, you can feel like it's almost tainted. We were talking. That's when David chimed in. We were talking about like creativity and the art we make and uh, the creative process as embodiment. That was good. Um, and how sometimes there's like this standard or pressure on creativity and on what is beautiful, what's good art, and what's expected of you, what you expect of yourself, what others expect of you. Um, yeah, how we were asking how much intention must be present as you are making things and creating things versus just uh, arguably being intentionless, letting things happen. Um, and that depends on the how, back to Allison's rule of when I make my art, I have to not show it to anyone because then I get in the way of my own ability to truly incarnate this thing. So that was what my estuary group talked about. Very, very good. If we were laughing, we were opening up, and not that they didn't talk a whole lot. I just didn't really have as many notes. But Ilya and Brittany did engage with all of those things I just discussed, and had a lot to say. I just wasn't able to get it down. Um, and then we went to go back up, and then John Vervaeke spoke. And I've only listened to his episodes with Peterson. Again, I kind of have a similar understanding of him as I do of Pajot. It's in proxy to Peterson, so I haven't really gone out and listened to his own stuff. He basically shattered all worldview dichotomies since Descartes in about 40 minutes via very understandably articulated aspects of perception and processing and everyday cognitive science. And don't I'm happily scared at how that would affect how we teach science and uh, any left brain fields going forward anywhere in the world. uh, that would be absolutely revolutionary. I don't know if they're going to make his lecture public, but holy crap! Wow, that was so good. We were not John Vercooked, but we were John Verbaked. That was baked. Like that was in an oven. That was so good. Oh my gosh. So I didn't realize he was that short. He wears good shoes. What else? I'm going. Yeah, real relevance realization is imaginal, and it's indispensable to being rational. The Enlightenment gave us a model of disengagement. The fact value split is bunk. Things can be compelling but not compulsive. The sunset is compelling, but you're not addicted to the sunset. There's a voluntary necessity. That's what he calls it. It's like falling in love. The religio is the domain of voluntary necessity. That's what he means when he's talking about spirit. Porous participation. Porous participation isn't just horizontally relational, it's vertically relational. There's like the ultimate sense of meaning, and then there's the sub ego, the primordial, and those two things can actually be resonating together at the same time. The archetypal and the paradigmatic cognition is both sub-egoic, and he didn't say this, but I'm assuming the opposite would be super egoic. I don't know if that messes up with Freud's term of superego or not. But he then talked about the Charles Taylor thing of the buffered self and how, myself ends with me right here. Done. I'm not defined by any other relational context beyond this meat sack right here. Um, the divorce of intimacy and inquiry. We can study things completely removed and observed from them and not actually be engaging with them in any real sense or morally implicative sense. And he says, no, you can't do that. That's not how that works. And I completely agree. Uh, and then Roger here talked, and I must confess, I was not as engaged for that one. I'm going to have to watch that one later. Um, and he was saying a lot of things that had been said by some other folks. But then we all went to dinner, and dinner was really nice. So the food, for one, was amazing. It was like basically Mediterranean fare. It was wonderful. Shish kebabs everywhere. And then I found myself seated at a table with just a bunch of 20 somethings, which actually felt kind of refreshing at that point. Um, there's this wonderful Finnish fellow by the name of Matti, Matti, who literally moved to America 1 week ago and is beginning a PhD in economics at Northwestern. And he's already aware of Vervaeke and Pajot, and he's like, I'm just going to come. So, super, super jolly guy. Then a gentleman named Cameron from San Diego who's studying to be a licensed therapist, big on the Jordan Peterson, Vervaeke, Pajot, symbolic world stuff. Gentleman named Ryan from the Grand Rapids Estuary Group. We bonded over uh, Grand Rapids things. And then this lovely married couple named Daniel and Emily. We had a wonderful conversation about godly masculinity and femininity and why you ought to why men ought to marry a woman years younger than her. Otherwise, the woman is less likely to respect the man. They have a 6 year age gap and believe they were 29 and 23 when they got married. And she was all like, oh, yeah, like, you got to do that. And here's why we do this. And, I love that my husband is super smart and has a PhD, and we're both very intellectual people, but I love like following that lead, and I can work in our garden and on in the home, and I love it. And I had not yet, for all my uh, involvement with younger, more trad people these days that are in the BLT on the Canterbury Trail in some fashion. I actually hadn't really yet met a married couple who, in a non-cringe way, actually were really leaning into the like the more uh I don't even know how to say it, because trad is also becoming a word that is starting to mean less things because it's getting overused. But like a young man who is in a position to offer a lot more to a younger woman who is totally fine with respecting that, and she wants to marry someone who she can respect and not even have this like even latent feminism or quasi partial feminism going on, like truly more very complementarian view and actually being happy. Like they would never have chosen anything else, and they're just happy, and this is the way it is. And they seem like both very wonderful individuals, and they're very involved and they're in the world. They're not like, just coming out for this conference and going back to their, you know, cloistered home where they never see anybody or do anything. Like that's not the vibe that they had at all. Um, and that was just really cool. I had never really had a conversation with a young married couple like that. They've been married for about 3 or 4 years now. And so that was encouraging. That was really encouraging. And also, and I think it helped me realize that this isn't just like a kitschy, easily ridiculable, jokeable internet stereotype. These women actually exist out there, and these men exist out there that they want to marry. So that was cool. And who else did I meet at dinner? There's a gentleman named Seth, but I didn't really talk with him much because we were at different conversations, different sides of the table. And yeah, I talked with Daniel and Emily a good bit, long good bit, especially even after we left the dinner table. Um, and then we had the panel discussion where all of them were fielding questions. That was really lovely. That was great. And then the night was over. We all went our separate ways, and now I am relaying this to you. Uh, it's very difficult to describe just exactly how mind blowing and enriching this was today, and not in like a and not mind blowing in the way that happens like when you have your chemistry class and you know how to use pressure to like remotely smash your soda can or put baking soda and vinegar together to make fake lava out of the volcano thing. This wasn't like science fair. Whoa, cool. It was, these are the bedrock parts of our being and existence. Uh, and it should be our life mission to do whatever degree of community making we can for the rest of our lives to make sure that this light doesn't die out and we essentially allow for some kind of a living lonely hellscape on earth. And I think the panelists and the speech that really drove home just how bad this could be if we just let it go. I think the one who really drove that home for me was Dr. John Vervaeke. Um, you could tell that he feels this very acutely, and it wasn't this like fatalist, run of the hill. It wasn't this Eric Weinstein on Chris Williamson level of like we have to we have to band together and fix this and go to Mars. It wasn't retreatist in the slightest. It was uh, live with this kind of abandon and friendliness as best as you can because this friendliness, this spirit, this fabric is the very glue for everything in our lives. And if we don't have it, we die. Um, Metaphorically, metaphysically, literally, it is not life, it is death. And it's one thing to know that, but like he was kind of able to help me understand how the abstract aspects of that conversation actually are more real and tactile than you would normally talk about abstract things in conversation. And that's because of the relevance realization thing and how you are perceiving patterns even before you arrive at them, and how that's technically how you live every aspect of your day in the physical world as well. And so you're always anticipating, and therefore it's not wrong to technically be saying you're always imagining. And so who's to say that uh, what we would call abstract isn't just a more delayed, latent observation of something real in the imaginal that just simply has not gone down the Pageot fractal potentiality tree yet. But that doesn't make it any less able to be and to have arrived and to exist and to be in actuality. So we are the only creatures who make promises in the animal kingdom. That was another thing Dr. Viveki said. No other creature does that. We have the ability to take something that, and he would probably advise against this language if he's saying all of this is integrated anyway, but take something in our head and then turn it out and make it real. The implications of those separations, those dimensions, are probably getting at, they're not probably getting at what he would like us to believe about the porous participation thing. But yeah, that was really good. So anyway, that's day one of Midwestuary 2025. I've already made so many friends, got in contact with them. I absolutely plan on finding some way to keep in touch with them till another conference like this next year. And I'm curious what they think of the BLT project. So one day down, one day to go.
People for me. This is a lot of what we call the first wave of Vanderklay fans, who back when you could still click on a link that was in the description of Paul's videos and had a decent chance of getting on his calendar, and then he would just send you a Zoom invite, and then you could just be appearing on his channel without any warning. There was a certain kind of person who found that a very compelling thing to do for reasons we still don't really understand. And
God of your own understanding. You already won one. It was not
Oh,
the
no, I have the God of Chad's understanding.
God of your own understanding, right there.
It's a person. It's got to be a person, sir. Care to rephrase. A person within TLC who's known for AA.
Chad, that is correct. Chad.
This common meme within TLC, featured most commonly on the Paul Vanderklay channel, mentions a traditional wheat product and a mallard. Oh, I'm going with Chris here in orange.
Yeah.
Ducks like bread, let's see it.
They do.
Ducks eat bread, close enough, we got it.
the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Lord, how I want to be in that number. When the saints go marching in.
And when the trumpet sounds in